Hello, welcome back to my channel, which is called With X Audio. So today we'll be focusing on mix bus processing, in particular, how I usually go about it. And believe it or not, I've changed my approach quite a bit since I mixed this song that I'm about to show you, because my template keeps evolving over time. You know, what might have worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. But anyways, I'll go through what I did here, and hopefully it will inspire you to take a few hints and use it, on your workflow. So, without further ado, here's a portion of the song we will be focusing on in the upcoming videos. The band is called Vizinhança, which is Portuguese for bad neighborhood, and they're a rock band based here in Lisbon, Portugal. So, here we go. Little solo section there. I don't want to show you the vocals just yet because we will get to that in an upcoming video. So let's dive in and listen to the same section without any processing. Okay, so quite a drastic change there, particularly on certain elements. For example, you can clearly hear how the low end feels a lot less tighter, and the top is a lot more muffled. Those are the two things that are more apparent right from the bat. So let's engage every plugin one by one, and I'll go through what settings I've dialed in. Okay, so here's the first one, which is the Neve 33609. So you can hear that I'm not compressing a lot, maybe 1-2 dB of gain reduction, and my mix knob is not even at 100%. See, it's not even dialed in all the way to the right, which means that I'm allowing some of the direct signal to come through. I'm pretty sure that I was compressing a lot more when I first dialed in the plugin, when I was starting the mix, but I'm pretty sure that as the mix progressed, I must have backed off quite a bit. It looks like I'm using a fast attack here. And a very fast release, 100 milliseconds. Sometimes the automatic option works as well. Well, this is the one that worked here. And I'm using a 1.5-to-1 ratio, so nothing too drastic. If you've watched my previous video, you'll know by now that I favor smaller increments on each compressor. And my mix bus is no different. I keep that same philosophy on the mix bus. However, in recent times, I found myself using the SSL bus compressor, also by UAD, instead of this one. And for some reason, I like how it feels when I push it a little bit harder. It depends on the song, really. Okay, so coming up, we've got the Fairchild 670. Again, only partially dialed in a mix knob, as you can see here. Here we go. It looks like I'm allowing at least 50% of the dry signal to come through as well. So let's hear it. Here's without the plugin engaged, and then I'll engage it midway. So the way I have this set up, and by the way, the Fairchild always comes second on my mix bus, is that I'm using it for the color. I seldom compress with the Fairchild on a mix bus. It's mostly for the sound of the transformers, or what the good people at UAD brilliantly managed to emulate. And as you can hear, it's adding a bit of excitement and drive in the top end. Again, small increments, nothing too drastic, but it's also grabbing some of the peaks, especially when it's used with the 33609. Listen to how the bass and the kick suddenly seem to find a pocket within the context of the mix when the plugins are engaged. So that's basically what I'm after at this stage. I'm trying to grab little peaks, trying to add some excitement, because both of these plugins are emulating actual pieces of hardware. So they try to emulate the sound of the transformers and the sound of the tubes in the case of the Fairchild. Moving on, we've got the Pultec EQ. Here it is with the plugin off first. So again, I'm adding low end in the 100 hertz region and a bit of top at 10K for clarity. You can see that I'm backing up on the output control here, to prevent from being deceived by perceived loudness. So now, coming up, we've got the Shadow Hills mastering compressor. And let's turn that off for now. I'm not compressing too much, perhaps 1 or 2 dB of gain reduction. And I usually play with the transformers section here. So you've got nickel, iron, and steel. It looks like I'm using iron. And I'm only using the discrete circuit, so the discrete compressor, and it looks like the optical portion is bypassed. So let's listen to the same section with the plugin bypassed, and then I'll engage it midway. I'm actually quite surprised that I did go a bit more extreme with this one, because I usually do. Because this plugin usually comes a bit later in the mix bus chain, but for some reason I used it quite earlier. This only goes to show that each mix is a new mix, and no formula is ever set in stone or anything. So let's go through the different transformers so you can hear the difference between the 3 modes. Let me just play with that. Let's start with the iron, which is the one that I ended up using, and then I'll change to nickel and steel as well. The differences are very, very subtle, but to my ears, the nickel has a lot more top end and a lot more bite, whereas the steel has a lot more low end, oomph. And the iron just sounds, a bit more neutral in comparison. So that's the one I use in this case. Okay, so next we have the Millennia NSEQ2, and this is one of the most musical plugins that I'm aware of. And as you can see, I wasn't shy to push that 10K band, yet it still sounds quite pleasant. So let me show you the before and after, and then I'll discuss the rest of the process with this plugin. Let me turn that off, and then I'll engage it. If certain plugins have that sort of finished product quality to them, this is definitely the poster boy for that. It almost sounds finished to my ears when I engage this. Although it wasn't finished when I inserted the plugin, certainly, but it sounds quite polished. And that's because this band sounds super, super musical. You can push it very, very hard. It never sounds bad. It might sound a bit over the top, but it doesn't sound bad. I know that I usually talk about small increments, but I wasn't shy on pushing things with the millennia. In fact, I always drive it a little bit harder. It's hard making it sound bad, and as you can see, I'm also boosting some of the low end here. I'm boosting 100 and attenuating some of the boxiness in the lower mids. Not too much, just 1 dB or half a dB. I could have trimmed the output, as it's definitely giving me a bit of volume. So let's do that for demonstration purposes. Let me back off a little bit here, and let's try that again. Yeah, that really is night and day. Oh, and I'm also boosting the upper mids as well. Okay, coming up, we've got the Soothe 2 and the Pro Q3. And the reason why I'm going to engage these two at the same time is because they're addressing harshness. And, it makes sense to engage and bypass them at the same time. So let's listen to the Soothe first. It's very subtle, but it's definitely grabbing some of those peaks in the upper mid-range frequencies. And then I also follow that with the Pro Q3. Okay, let's put that in the 3 dB display range so we can see those bands a little bit better. I'm not attenuating a lot. I'm not even going to 3 dB in either of those bands. And I'm actually pushing 1.5 here to compensate for that. So coming up, I have the A1 stereo control plugin, which by the way is free, and I've included a link in the description. Again, I like to use small increments when it comes to stereo width. I'm not pushing it too hard. I sometimes go a bit more extreme in, guitar buses, for example, but not in the mix bus. Oh, and I always use this safe bass setting at around 150 or 200. It looks like it's at 187 here. This basically means that frequencies below this setting will remain in mono. I don't mind spreading the lower mids and above, but I definitely like my low end to remain mono. So let's listen to the before and after. But again, nothing too drastic. It's essentially making a little room for the central instruments like, the kick, bass, snare, and slightly pushing the guitars to the sides. Okay, so last but not least is the Sonox Oxford Inflator. I've attenuated the output for the video because it was originally a bit hotter. This plugin is quite hard to describe. It can be pushed harder on the input section, which gives you sort of tube-like tape saturation. It has a soft clipper, and it definitely adds glue. So in other words, it has a built-in compressor / limiter. Other than that, I really have no idea what's going on here. I know how it sounds, and I like how it sounds, but be careful with the output. It can get pretty loud pretty easily. And again, it might deceive you while it's engaged because, louder will always sound better. So bear that in mind. So let's compare the before and after. Okay, let me push that input section a bit harder, which might help you hear the differences more clearly. Let me dial back on the output. Let's listen to that. Let me go a bit more extreme here. So we're actually, hitting the red. And already you can hear the kick drum, distorting a little bit in a quite pleasant way. It sounds a bit more like what tape would sound like if you were hitting tape harder. So let's listen to that again. You know what? I quite like how it sounds now, but I can't go back. The song is out already, but I quite like how this is sounding now. So let me, let's go back to where it was. There we go. Again, it's reducing some of the peaks. It's gluing the whole thing. I could have gone for that glued sound right from the bat with the 33609. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. It definitely works better with the UAD SSL bus compressor, to my ears at least. And that's what I'm using at the moment. It wasn't what I was using here while I was mixing this song. I've since, changed my template. It keeps changing over time. That's just how it goes. But I prefer to do things, and I don't want to repeat myself, but I will repeat myself now. I like to do things in smaller increments, especially in the digital domain. It just sounds better to my ears. Okay, guys, so that was that. Let me just refresh your memory and play this whole section again without any plugins, and then I'll engage them midway through. Here we go. There you go. Now, one thing that I would like to address is, should you compress and EQ on the mix bus right from the beginning, or should you leave it until the end? Well, it really depends on you. I like to do my balance first. That means do my, whatever you want to call it, gain staging, do my pannings, do some high pass filtering and some corrective EQ right at the beginning, and then move to the mix bus and engage, the compressor, followed by the Fairchild, followed by the Pultec, etc. And That's what works for me. It might not be what necessarily works for you. So do experiment with that. Okay, so before we wrap this up, please hit the like button and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. And please leave any suggestions or comments in the comment section. You've probably noticed that the name of the channel is Withix Audio. But what's Withix Audio anyways? Withix Audio is a small company that I started here in Lisbon, Portugal. Our mission is essentially to unburden mixing engineers of boring tasks such as, editing drums and other instruments, tuning vocals, color coding Pro Tools sessions according to their taste, importing their templates, do all the routing, etc. In other words, we provide remote assistance to mixing engineers. So if you're a mixing engineer looking to focus solely on mixing, visit our website, the one that's on the screen now and also on the description, and we'll give you a free quote. So thank you very much for watching. I look forward to read your feedback, and I'll see you next week. Bye.